science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction. Fiction. Fiction.
Hello and happy Friday night. My name is Ayla and this is Exofathom, the funky show where we mind wrestle with the unknowable and chatter about legends, myth, philosophy, weird science, and other things. As always, I'm joined tonight by my two lovely co-hosts, Nick and Mike. Are you both not unwell tonight?
I am not unwell. Thank you.
Glad to hear it.
I am not unwell, just to be contrarian.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, don't be. It's fine. It's fine.
Well, you said you were not unwell, which implies that you're not well.
Yeah, it's fine.
Oh.
I'm not okay, I promise.
Okay, wait. Did you still have that cat claw hanging on the tree limb?
Yeah, a little bit. It's up there.
That's good. That's good.
How are you doing, Ayla?
One dew claw. I'm good. For listeners out there, I am coping with a bad haircut. But other than that, I can't complain. So
yeah, at
salty.
least you have hair.
That's true.
Right?
It's very true. It's very true. Well, cool. For those of you listening with us live, thank you so much for joining us. If you're not, if this is a Tuesday, happy Tuesday, etc. ad infinitum. Tonight's episode should be an interesting one. I prepped it like before the holidays and we've had to push it back a few times. So it's a little bit raw. And I don't know if it's going to be a short conversation or a long conversation, but I did want to touch on a couple of ideas. One, we'll talk about the monkey paw story. This idea that wishes can backfire, monkey paw scenarios. Did any of you watch Bullet Train that came out with Brad Pitt recently?
Yes, I did.
You did? Mike, did you watch that one yet?
I haven't been to the theaters in a good minute, so I missed it. I wanted to see it, just think life got busy.
Yeah, I think it's on Netflix for like the holidays, perhaps.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it's a good episode. One of the main characters is often talking about monkey paw situations. But beyond that,
is it like a Christmas movie, like Die Hard, or did it just come out around the holidays?
I think they just released it on Netflix right before or right after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So it's just recently out.
What's Netflix? What is this Netflix?
Well, see, it used to be a DVD rental service on the internet.
The old Blockbuster.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, Blockbuster. Now you're talking my language. I know what
right,
that is.
yeah.
I go down to the Blockbuster every week to find the movies.
The cinema. So anyway, that's just a sidebar. But yeah, so we're gonna talk monkey paw. We'll talk a little bit about this idea of wishing in the right way, aka manifesting. What's that all about? And then finally, I don't know what to call it exactly, some brain research that will lead to a resurgence of maybe existential dread, epistemological query, and metaphysical deep dives, all of which are likely to blur the lines between realism and verisimilitude. But first, before we get into all of that, to each of you, if you suddenly had 3 wishes, how would your wish strategy change if you knew that the vehicle for your wish making was benevolent or malevolent?
That's a good question.
I
mean, go ahead, Mike. Why don't you answer this one?
I was just going to stream of consciousness it.
Go for it. I'm still puzzled.
Yeah.
So if it's benevolent, it implies I would think that I would get what I want, but I'm a really dumb human, so I don't know exactly what I want. This is why I don't like deal with wishes or anything like that. So the only thing, the safe bet would be to wish for infinite wishes, always. That's always the safest bet in these situations, and maybe a little bit of a cop-out. That's fine.
I like it. I like that idea. I also like this idea of just not wanting anything.
Yeah.
It seems prudent,
And if it was malevolent, then definitely I'm like, yeah, I just don't want either. Like if it was like a pinhead type situation,
Right.
then yeah, then definitely like, no, I'm good. I could skip over
Mm-mm.
all of these wishes. I don't need anything. I'm all right.
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 Exactly.
Yeah. You know, I watched the latest Hellraiser film that came out this year, and I don't know if this was apparent in the past episodes, but at least in this one, yeah, it was like a whole miscommunication where, like, if you want the most pleasure, it's all about the most pain. Like, let's turn you inside out because that's just what they did on their
I think
planet.
all the Hellraisers are like a monkey's paw situation, right?
Oh, okay,
For
that
sure.
makes sense.
Yeah.
I appreciate
Well,
the franchise more now.
yeah, monkey paw situation from our point of view, but from the what do they call it?
Cenobite.
Yeah, from the Cenobite point of view, then they're proper.
Mm-hmm.
I always think it's Cinnabon.
Cinnabons.
All in Cinnabons.
tasty carnage.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think like the safest bet if you ever come across a genie or something like a djinn type thing is not to like wish for anything. Like for the most part, the stuff that you would normally wish for, you can get through hard work, right? I think
Yeah, in
hopefully,
theory.
in theory, yeah,
Right.
yeah. We don't live in the most meritocratic societies.
I was gonna
But
say.
you know, at least like there's like this old philosophical thing where the value of hard work is within the hard work itself. And if you take that to its logical extreme, then you don't need any wishes. You don't need any prayers. You don't use just you're working for the work itself.
What if
But
your
then
dog has cancer?
oh well, my dog had cancer. Then sorry, little doggy. We all got to go sometime. Like when I can't like
Right,
reload.
because you could be like, I want it to not have a cancer, and if it's malevolent, it'll be like, okay, it has a heart disease now, or I don't know, something worse.
Well, I think
Yeah, or pet
think
cemetery status comes
Yeah.
back from bed and tries to kill.
Yeah, Pet Cemetery is a good one too.
I think a question that might add a little bit more of a wrinkle, not necessarily, and probably would just buttress Mike's answer, but if they presented themselves to you at the same time and didn't tell you which is which.
Okay.
Oh,
You
this is
know.
like a knights and a knave type problem now.
Yeah, or like the riddle of the two doorways, right? Yeah, I think that kind of, to me, I wouldn't know to trust the one that said that they were benevolent because there's a malevolent one out there. And so you have this almost suspicion that like it could be the malevolent one telling me that they're the good one. I don't know.
Right, it could totally lie. So no,
Yeah.
it makes a total sense.
Right.
Ooh,
Yeah,
do
it's
think-
like a Faustian bargain.
Yeah.
Point.
quite
Yeah.
the riddle.
I
Yeah.
do think the ultimate answer probably is somewhere closer to what Mike is saying. You know, and the sort of what Nietzsche talked about reoccurrence, right? It's like if you could relive your life, would you change anything? And the ultimate, you know, like pinnacle is to live a life in which you would never change anything and sort of relive always. And so getting yourself to like a point where you don't have wishes is probably a good place to be.
For
That's
sure.
the way to nirvana, right? Like we're supposed to reincarnate so many times up until the point where you're pretty much satisfied. Like you've lived the quote unquote proper life. And the proper life is, in my idea, one where you wouldn't change anything, even the good or the bad.
Mhm.
Do you think in this do you think that how do you think free will plays into that? Because like, you know, to me when it comes to wishing, I feel like it's sort of on the same vein as good luck, bad luck. And, you know, you can have free will in a deterministic universe, sort of, right? You can still will something, even though you can't actuate it, right? There's some people argue about that. But I think what I mean to say is when it comes to wishing
Ooh.
and sort of being, oh, yes.
No, that's a great question. My brain jumped to two different things. I'm going to try to combine them together. So I used to play a lot of World of Warcraft, and you could either sit there and like this is back in the Burning Crusade days for anybody who plays WoW and a little bit of Wrath and Lich King. So you could sit there and spend the time of leveling up your character, Or you could pay somebody to level them up for you, and then you get the end game result of it. But like that's like a you leveling up yourself is manifesting and willing it into being. You paying somebody is like the wish for it. But what I found is that if you pay somebody to do it, the people that did do it didn't know how to play their class at all. They were just given all these abilities and gifts within the game, had no idea how to use them. Whereas on the people that spent time and leveled up their character, they knew the mechanics of that role and how to play that role to perfection, ideally. So
like
that's
Mortal Kombat, button mashing versus knowing the codes.
Yeah, knowing your combos, doing all the work, and figuring out both mechanical and higher level strategy type stuff. So when it comes to wishes, for example, I could wish for infinite money. And for me, I really, really like cookies. I mean, I eat cookies a lot. I eat cookies probably a little bit too much.
Cookies are great.
Cookies are amazing. So if I had infinite money, I could spend all of my money on cookies, end
Nick,
up with
do you like
diabetes
cookies?
and die. But if I worked my way up to infinite money, I learned that balance. All right, maybe this week I've spent like a good couple $100 on cookies. I could calm down on the cookies next week.
Or you have to go to work to earn the cookies, so you can't eat cookies while earning more cookies. So yeah.
Like you end up learning that thing. Whereas with wishes and the wish come true, you just get the end result. You don't actually learn the process of the cookies that you're trying to get.
Now, you thought of this, I like this concept, but it came out of the question about will versus fate. So I'm trying to think about the cookie example.
Free will tend to lean like if it was a wish, where you go all in on the cookies. Whereas if you had the time and like it was your fate to get the infinite amount of money, you would learn how to manage your cookie problem, where it would figure itself out because you would take steps up into getting it. It's the same thing with the lottery, basically. Right? You either work your way to get very rich, or you win the lottery, become very rich, and become bankrupt within like 10 years. I think the majority of them do. Right? Like they got their wish fulfilled, they got all the money, and they went kind of crazy with it, versus learning how to manage the money as you stepped up through the hard work.
And the lottery one definitely is an interesting example to bring in around wishes, because it's true. A lot of people who win the lottery go on to have really terrible luck after, almost as if they've used up their allotment of luck, and now the balance scales of fate are coming in, or something like that.
Yeah,
which would be like fatal. I don't know.
The human free will caused you to kind of go a little nuts. You didn't quite learn how to manage your own free will until it was too late.
If you recall our luck episode, Nemesis is what appears, right?
Yes.
Those who take advantage of fortune too much get visited by Fortune's sister, who punishes them.
Right. Yeah. Which is like a third element. You can have a malevolent wish giver, a benevolent wish giver, or a universe in which there's a certain allotment of wishes, and you can't get too many wishes or else you're bringing bad luck on yourself, which is interesting, especially because we're so prone to wish willy-nilly. But
I do like this notion as luck being some sort of a limited resource that you can't build again. That is an interesting idea. Whereas I think, like, as if you put goodwill into the world, then you start to build up it's more like a karmic system, I guess. Like the more good you put in, the more good luck you build for yourself. There's an old saying that I learned from a hockey video game. It's like you have to be good to be lucky, and lucky to be good. So it's sort of like this self-propelling wheel, where as long as you keep doing good stuff and putting in good work, then that luck sort of builds itself. But yeah, luck as a limited resource is a very interesting idea, and I think it's one that holds true for the majority of humans.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about it as something that you can like put back into, like with good karmic debt accumulation, or that's something that's like quantified. For cats, we tell them you've got 9 lives, that's it. 9 chances. Why 9? Why not 6 or 4 or 3? And if that applies to cats, where's the book on the rules for all the other animals out there, including humans? Because I'd want to read that, like what's
Yeah.
the golden number for humans?
Yeah, I mean, lucky talismans have been around for quite some time. So I think, and a lot of rituals that we used to practice, and still some that we do now. I mean, kissing the Blarney Stone in Ireland is still a huge thing, and
Oh,
you're
yeah.
supposed to kiss it upside down, and it's supposed to bring you good luck for the year. Pardon me, the Chinese New Year, they give out money in red bags and red envelopes. That's supposed to give good luck.
True.
Yeah, so I think that society has a way of sort of like like fracking for luck almost. You know what I mean? Where it's like we're deep sea drilling for luck through like our social customs sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean it is super interesting. And so the reason this episode came out, I was watching that Bullet Train movie, and Nick had commented like, "Oh, it's like a monkey's paw situation," and I just remember thinking like, "God, that's a good phrase. What's that story again?" So I revisited the original story. It's a horror short story by an English author, W.W. Jacobs, and unless you two want to add anything to prior conversations, I can just kind of read a quick summary of the story with a couple of question breaks in between.
Get into it.
Yeah? Okay. So, The Monkey's Paw. It's a short story that revolves around a family, Mr. and Mrs. White, and then they have their older son, Herbert. They have a friend, Morris. He comes to dinner, and he brings up with him this mummified monkey's paw. And he tells them that it can grant 3 wishes, but only with, quote, hellish consequences as punishment for tampering with fate, end quote. In fact, it's so awful, he just decides to toss it in the fire. And his friend, Mr. White, is skeptical and grabs it. And he's like, this is a cool keepsake. Why would you just chuck it in the fire? It might be worth money. I could sell it. So they're going back and forth, and Morris is just like, dude, get rid of that thing. It's bad vibes. And Mr. White's like, I don't know, I kind of like it. So monkey paws, like paws, monkey. Sorry.
Monkey paws.
Monkey paws. Let's say you're in this situation. Okay. So Nick, Mike is coming back from travels and a monkey's paw falls out of his pocket. Now you don't know anything about it. He's just saying like, this is bad vibes. Don't take it. You could get 3 wishes, but it's bad. Would you keep the monkey's paw, or would you let him burn that shit? Because I would be like, burn it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But I think it's more of like an allegory of the perspective of experience, right? So the one guy who doesn't know anything about the monkey's paw sees it as like a seductive possibility, whereas the guy who's already experienced it knows that you don't want to mess with this thing. So it becomes like that Greek tragedy thing where you get what's her Cassandra, warning about the Greeks, right? Nobody believes her. It's like just the lack of experience can't really make up, you can't really make that up in other ways. You have to just kind of experience something to understand it.
And it comes through, what's interesting is the wisdom, right? Like if somebody was wise and they give a little bit of advice, then they would probably pick up on it and not pull the monkey's paw out of the fire. Right? Like, all right, I believe, like, I trust you.
Right.
Where you're like, you trust me. If I say it's bad vibes, then it's probably bad vibes. And a little bit of curiosity, right? Going back to Cats and 9 Lives of human curiosity would tell you like I would pull it out, but I know Mike, and if it's bad vibes, it's probably bad vibes. And it plays into that sort of thing of like the inner social, like, do you trust me? Do you not? And if you have the wisdom enough to trust another human to tell you like not to do the thing. But the ultimate teacher, as Nick said, is personal experience. I mean,
Yeah.
Thoreau has talked about this too. That tends to be the ultimate teacher, is that personal experience. So I wouldn't fault Nick for pulling out of the fire. I'd just be like, all right, man, I'll be right here with you.
What can you do?
Yeah, I'll hang out with you and watch see the hellish consequences. Pull you.
Yeah.
I'll be the Virgil to your Dante if you really want to do this.
Summon a
man.
demon.
Now, here's a question. If it was me with the monkey's paw, and for those of you who don't know me, I can be a little dramatic. Would you still be like, screw the monkey's paw? Or would you be like, nah, I don't know. Ayla could be exaggerating. Like, how bad?
Yeah,
bad
but
could
you
it
got
be?
like you got like spookiness in your family, so yeah, I would listen.
Yeah, same. If Ayla's
Yeah.
like, my intuition's telling me not to do this, I'm like, I'm not fucking doing it. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
That's true. Trust your native friend. They
Yeah.
always know. Sorry, I just love it. My family lineage includes spookiness.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. So, okay, the friend leaves. Mr. White keeps the paw, doesn't let it get burned. And the family's all like, bro, like, that was weird. Does this thing even work? Like, how dumb does he think we are? Right? They're just making fun of their friend that left behind his back. And Mr. White doesn't even know what to wish for. You know, he tells his son, like, oh, gee, I have everything I need. Things are quite peaceful, actually. You know, he's just, and then his
Well,
son's like,
it sounds like this guy needs to get some new friends. Right? Like you leave, like,
Maybe.
don't mess with that monkey's paw. Let it burn. All right, I'm out of here.
right.
And then someone grabs it and like,
Don't you touch it though.
idiot. Yeah. They're like, this guy's an idiot. He's being weird. What's going on? Get some new friends.
Perfectly good severed monkey's paw. Come
Right,
on.
that's a classic paperweight. That could be for World Market or Anthropology or something. Yeah, and so what's funny too to me is that Mr. White literally takes a moment in the story and he's like, you know, I really don't need anything. I don't need to wish for anything. And then that's when his son, Herbert, pops up and he's like, well, don't you owe 200 pounds on the house? Let's just wish for that. That's sensible. And then if it works out, it'll help you out. Win-win. So his dad, smiling shame-faced at his own credulity, made a wish for 200 pounds. So tapping the monkey's paw again. I really love this idea of smiling shame-faced at oneself over, you know, one's own credulity. I'm being snooty on purpose.
And it raises a pretty good question. I don't know if the story touches on this. So if it does, you don't have to answer. But, you know, making the point of him recognizing that he doesn't have anything that he really needs. Would a monkey's paw work positively if somebody had a true need?
I wonder. That's a really good question. I mean, yeah, it's not like there's a footnote where they
Yeah,
offer
right.
that, but it
Right.
would be a good, interesting. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's kind of like a proletariat approach to the monkey's paw, though, right? Like,
Yes.
if
it's
you're
very-
rich and you're wishing
it's
for
very-
stuff,
yes.
screw you. But if you're poor, it's Robin Hood.
Workers of the
shit.
world unite.
Like,
Exactly.
if you're already in hell, I mean, why not make a wish, right? These
Right.
hellish consequences are gonna come like, I've been in hell for like 20 years working this job. What are you talking about?
Right,
Right.
right. Maybe it's just like get a new shitty friend. I'm a shitty person. So we be
Yeah.
shitty people
Well,
together.
see, this is where this is exactly right. So how do we game the monkey's paw? Can you game the monkey's paw through altruism?
Yeah, like you wish for world peace. How could that go bad?
Well, I
Dystopian
mean, in many
pathways.
I think there's one man who's really good at orating would tell you that if you
Yeah.
go wrong, go just a little bit, you know?
yeah. There's some bad stuff in the past, man.
There
Um,
would be world peace for sure. But
Yeah,
it's
whose
the
peace?
cost of that
Whose peace we talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
Peace sells, but who's buying?
Or
Mhm.
it's just like one giant pea, because how like a monkey's paw doesn't have ears, right? So maybe it just heard
or it just breaks the
world
world into
pea.
pieces.
Oh,
And
I
have-
just
you
thought
know,
it was
you
like
go
a pea
world
the size
peace.
of the world.
I'm gonna go full Terminator. It just ends up being ran by robots. There's no humans left on Earth, and
Right.
the whole world is peaceful because it's all robots.
You know what's funny is anytime somebody says the word Terminator, in my mind, I instantly get an image of like the shiny metal skull with the red eyes smiling. And it's
Good
weird,
imagery.
right? Like you say a word and boom, that particular image is in my head. Thanks. Is it
Mhm.
James Cameron? Did you direct
Mhm.
that? Yeah. Forevermore.
That's
Yeah.
called good
That's-
branding.
Yeah.
Yeah, real good.
Yeah.
Mental
Seems good.
branding.
Yes.
Mental branding. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and yeah, so I also, but going to the credulity part of it, I really liked, well, one, it reminded me of the superstition episode. I think you hosted that one, Nick. And it was this idea of him catching himself believing in something kind of stupid. And he's like, I shouldn't believe in this, but I kind of do a little bit. And I recognize that. Like Nick said, I do come from a spooky family. And there's just some stuff, little superstitious things that, like, I guess like a ladder, right? I'm not going to walk under a ladder. If I have to, I will. But if I don't need to, I'll just step aside, right? It's stupid, but I'm not going to tempt fate if I
That's
don't
fair.
have to, right?
I tend to walk through the ladder. Right.
Knock
through
it over.
Phase through it?
Somebody
Yeah.
else.
Oh, there
Yeah,
you go.
just
Knock it over.
Yeah, if there's somebody on it.
Yeah,
your
just
shit
plow
out.
Body
right through
check
it.
it.
Yeah. Give it a little hip check. Little.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Little side bump.
No,
But yeah.
that's fair though. Like the superstitious thing is fair.
Yeah, well, and when it comes to wishing, do you think you have to believe in the power of the mechanism for it to work? I think you might have mentioned this earlier, Nick, but toss a penny in a fountain or do some manifestation, does it really come down to belief? And what's weird about that is it's like you can't really take a temperature on belief. Like, how do you know when you're believing enough in order for a thing to work?
I think it's too in like certain story elements, because most of this comes from story and
Mhm.
folklore and stuff, right? I think that like sometimes there is like that double-sided coin, or the two sides of the same coin thing, where it does take belief to make a wish come true, but I almost wonder if it takes incredulity to make a curse come true.
Right. Wait.
Like this concept of tempting fate. He was incredulous about the thing because he's kind of not really believing it. Like you're not giving yourself over to it. It's almost like a challenge to the power of the thing that you're contemplating or playing with.
Yeah, that's creepy. If I was a demon and somebody was like scoffing at my, demon implement or whatever, I'd
Right.
be a little more motivated to be like, oh, show you that, like
Mhm.
show you to not believe.
Can I get a definition check on credulity?
Incredulity.
Belief and in belief.
Disbelief. Yeah.
Okay, so it's belief or disbelief.
Mhm.
I got you. Sorry, I'm a simple human. Made it out of.
No,
elementary
I just.
school about it.
I think it would be it's kind of like an interest. I think we do that stylistically in tales to sort of encourage that, maybe a little bit of that spooky thinking sometimes. The thing that would throw the monkey paw into the fire. It's because tempting fate like that and saying, oh, this doesn't hold any weight, and then playing with it as if it were a toy could sort of like incur the wrath of the gods or whatever.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Mike, you got anything? That's fine if you don't.
Curses, belief, disbelief. So I'm just trying to run back the stack.
I know, it's like curses, bad luck, and evil, demons.
I mean, that mechanism of belief is so important for anything supernatural work, because once you get into that realm of your belief, credulity, whatever word you said, credulity. I feel like I'm like reading The Importance of Being Earnest when I was I've wandered way out of my social class.
It's a very British word.
Yeah.
It's a very British word. For sure.
Luck, those sorts of things, you wander into a realm of what, from a mathematician's point of view, would be called hidden variables, where we don't really know what it is and we can't really figure out what it is, but we know that it's there. And what we call luck might actually be a set of variables that we don't understand within the fabric of reality yet. But that mechanism, you have to believe, or you have to, one, you have to believe, but those variables have to exist in order for the equation to work. So when it comes to like luck, when it comes to belief and all of that, if you don't believe that it's there, then your equation kind of falls apart, and that's what makes the wishes work. Right? If you have a wish, that's your why. All the mechanisms are all the other variables, your x's and whatnot. But if you truly don't put some sort of belief into it, then you're never going to get your why.
Hmm. I like that. I like that. The idea of hidden variables and such. Good call. Good way to balance out not knowing credulity, mister. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not
There's
an
a
English
lot of
major.
words I don't know. There's a word you guys mentioned. I can't remember it. I've always got the Google up, so I'm like, what does that mean? Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, that's how real, like, as an adult, that's how learning is done. It took me so long to get into philosophy because I didn't know what the words meant, so I spent more time Googling the words than I spent reading philosophy. But once you get to a certain point, then you can read it and it's fine. That's how learning is done. Yeah.
Yeah. Or, my favorite thing in philosophy books is that you'll open it, right? And you'll come across a word you don't know. So then you look it up and you're like, oh, that's kind of a loaded rabbit hole. So then you try to like read the whole thing, kind of Then you turn the page and the author defines it, like the way that they're using it. And you're like, oh my God, I should have just turned the page. Like, they're going to define everything anyway. But
the rabbit hole is half as fun. It's great.
It is
It's like when we're watching movies. It's like when we're watching movies and you ask me what's going on right before the scene tells you what's going on. It drives me nuts. I'm like, just wait 3 seconds. 3 seconds and your answer.
You know that the answer was coming. I thought like I had checked out, and I was
because
totally
it happens
oblivious.
every time you ask. It happens with every question you ask, and every time you ask, it answers your question within like 3 seconds.
But how did the screenwriters do that? Huh?
My ex was just like that. She'd be like, well, what's happening here? I'm like, just wait.
Just wait.
Just
One
look at the
second.
screen. Yeah, just chill. Relax. You'll find out really quick.
Well, listen, gentle folk. Perhaps you don't have the lived experience. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just thinking about how like maybe women gaslight ourselves into being like, oh, we don't know, so we're gonna clarify because we must have missed something, rather than like, oh, they're gonna reveal it or something. But I don't.
Yeah, women.
I think it's a phone thing.
Or just
a phone thing? Oh, because we're on our phones all the time. I'm on my phone.
It's 100% a phone thing.
Oh, I don't know if it's that. I've sat in theaters where it's like, well, what does that mean?
Oh, okay.
No, just look at the screen. You're gonna find out.
Okay, well, if you're listening, if anyone out there is listening, just comment and let us know if you also ask yourself what's happening in a movie immediately as the movie reveals to yourself what is happening. Because it drives me nuts. I just wish I could know that the answer was coming. I don't like this.
Or it's an exhibition of synchronicity. I don't know.
I know. There's a lot of ways to wonder about it, right?
Hey, Ayla, have you seen a lot of Alfred Hitchcock movies? Because I feel like the suspense would kill you if you just be constantly asking.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on? What's going on?
Like Jack in Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
What's this?
Man, you must have hated Memento.
Yeah.
That literally doesn't tell you what's going on till the last minute.
Yeah, you know what I did during that whole movie? I checked out and I just focused on the soundtrack. Like, oh, that's a good song. That's a good song. Like, oh man, yeah. Oh man. Well, and then like movies like The Sixth Sense, spoiler alert, when there's like the big reveal and there's just this whole shift in the perception of the movie, deeply uncomfortable. I love it, but deeply uncomfortable. All right, so
I think you just need like the need for like truthful information, like right on the spot. I wonder if it's like men were fine with hunting things, like not figuring out where the animal actually is until the last moment. But when it comes to like gathering, then it's like you see the berry is there, you pull the berry. Like it's a very quick feedback loop. Whereas on the men's side, we're fine with feedback loops where things may not make sense for days, months, or years.
Here's a question.
Or we screw up.
Yeah, it's fair too.
Then it doesn't happen at all.
Yeah. Well, we're fine with that too.
Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting too, because I mean, I don't believe I've heard of you going on a hunting trip. I've never been on a hunting trip, nor Nick, but yet the idea that there can be this certain latency in your like inborn talent, that could have an effect on you. I mean, maybe that's like epigenetics or something like that, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's a different law.
No, you're fine. Like that's what I'm kind of diving back at, like it's these ancient roots where it seems like women have this not a need, but they're used to having that constant feedback loop where they understand concretely what's going on in that very moment, whereas men, they tend to not understand what's going on ever until the final moment. And that's and when it comes to like movie making,
I think you just unlocked why they work together so well.
Yeah,
because,
we could be like, what's happening right now? Oh, okay, great.
Right, exactly.
We were like figuring out the long-term picture.
Yep.
And they're like, well, what's happening? Like, so this is not the right form. Just wait. You can figure it out. The couple is just chill.
Millions of years of evolution to have your significant other ask you what's going on in a movie or a TV show.
Well, to be determined, we need a bigger sample size. So again, with the comments, keep them up. All right. So moving along. Okay, so Mr. White, he ends up making the wish. So his son was like, just wish for 200 pounds. He makes the wish and boom, instantly there's this big crashing sound. The piano crashes. At the same time, Mr. White dramatically drops the paw and he's ghastly looking because the mummified monkey paw's on the floor. It starts twisting around like a snake. Super creepy. He's creeped out. His wife is creeped out. And I had to look up the word. I should have included it, but they throw this like old school dish towel on top of the monkey's paw. And then they run upstairs to call it a night and they like lock the door.
A chamois.
That's what it was. Yes, a chamois.
A chamois?
Chamois, yes, is a type of chamois. So yeah.
No.
Wow, they got retro with that. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I like that. Connections and stuff. So anyway, the next morning, Mr. White wakes up and the story says that there was a wholesomeness restored in the house and he was starting to feel better. His wife even teases him and he's all like, no, it totally moved in my hand. And she's like, you only thought it moved in your hand. And so they're joking about it again. Now I'm going to pick another monkey's paws here just because I love this idea of a wholesomeness restored to the house. And you've been there if you're listening, or to the two of my co-hosts here, you watch a really scary film like The Exorcist at night, or there's like a scratching in the wall and you're like, okay, that's probably like a rat that moved in, but what if it's not? Like there's just this creepy vibe. You wake up from a nightmare and you have to go back to bed. And then the next morning, like everything is just fine. What is that? Is that just a good night's sleep? The passage of time? Is it like a reality shift?
It's you're projecting your reality. I mean, like look, we live in four walls and we're projecting our ideas out into those four walls. And so, when you get creeped out, things get creepy. And then you can't understand why you feel creeped out.
Right.
And then you have to sort of, like logic your way out of that feeling and be like, okay, what the hell? Why do I feel this way?
Yeah.
But it can make your environment seem much more threatening and foreign for sure.
Right. Like the first time we moved into this house, it's way quieter than anywhere I've lived before. Like there's no sound at night. And for the first 2 weeks, I was very unsettled. I could not sleep. I was having lots of nightmares. And now I love a quiet night and there's no fear there. But originally it was like, my brain was like, what's going, it was like deafening. And then you turn the lights off and it's just like, oh my God, something is coming. I'm in a void. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. But I just think it's funny because like you said, you realize you're being silly and you talk yourself out of it and a wholesomeness returns. But again, sort of like with wishing and self-fulfilling prophecies, I thought that was a really important little turning point in the film or in the movie, because it's like, Yeah, like you were scared and then you start laughing about being scared. So were you valid then or are you valid now?
Well,
Kind of
I
weird.
mean, I'm sure that the harmony is going to be disrupted again. So,
I have so many stories about stuff like that.
Right, from the Catholic in the group.
Yeah, I know, right? I think it's mechanically, I think it's a defense mechanism where you were creeped out and terrified, your brain tries to protect you, so you end up overcompensating, and you get the feeling of quote unquote wholesomeness. Um, yeah, because like I've had that. Like when I moved to Irvine for a while, I had to play soundtracks. Like I always grew up close to police stations, so I had to play soundtracks of like police sirens for me to go to sleep because it was just too quiet. I was so used to the background noise of like helicopters, cop cars, all that stuff. But when it comes to like a terrifying moment, I think it's your brain trying to protect itself and all the realness of it.
Hmm.
And then like the superstitious stories come in a little bit different. Yeah, like the last time that sort of happened was I was sleeping and I woke up, and I wasn't in a stage of sleep paralysis, but I woke up and there was um like a raven shaman at the edge of my bed.
Oh,
Like
like Moon's Night.
it was like maybe 5 feet tall at the most, but it had feathers all over its shoulders, all black, and it had a long beak, and it was shaking it was all all in black. And the way that my bedroom is, it's kind of backlit from the outside, so you can see the shape and you can see the feathers, you can see the silhouette, a little bit of the light bouncing off of what would be called like a key light or like a highlight light, like went down its nose. Like I knew it was a peak, but it was just standing there and it was shaking a baby's rattle. The baby's rattle was white, had two white feathers sticking out. And I was absolutely mortified when I saw this at the edge of my bed. And like I moved a little bit and it didn't go away. That's because I thought it was like a sleep paralysis hallucination.
Mm-mm.
And it didn't go away.
That's not good.
And until I spoke at it, and then it just vanished. And so I stayed up for like an hour or so, and then I finally fell asleep. But the next day when I woke up, it was like the house had been
Visited.
not visited, like someone went through with sage, venerated, maybe the word is, or like
Oh.
it was like that wholesomeness was there. And so whatever my brain did, if it was from a more realistic sense, like a hallucination, my brain self-corrected itself and overcompensated. So that wholesomeness was in the room. But from a more spiritual side, then something weird went down. So I can see where within the story where this terrifying thing happens, where they can't understand it, the brain self-corrects, and then you feel a certain like wholesomeness within the house.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, it would definitely make sense because the brain, it likes the predictable. And so when you're out of that immediate danger moment, it thinks back and it's like, well, that was just an anomaly. We're fine. Everything's fine. It's like resets or something. Well,
But if
cool.
y'all want to have a sleepover, we can play some video games and you can see some raven shamans.
right.
Oh my God. Okay, you're now in the class of people where if you come over, I've got to like sage the whole house because I don't want no to-go demons over here.
That's fine. Like that makes sense. I understand.
Well, I'm almost done with the story. Just 2 more parts. So the day goes on like any other. And the monkey's paw is just a taxidermy paperweight thing at this point. It's just sitting there. Except for the fact that a man comes to the house and he tells the husband and wife that their son has been in a gruesome work accident and he was killed. And for their troubles, he writes them a $200 or 200-pound check and hands it to them and leaves. And that's not good. I mean, that's pretty messed up.
Sounds like a win-win in my book. I don't have to worry about the kid and I get to pay off the debt. Perfect.
Right.
Just
Right.
kidding. Sorry.
Oh man, that's messed up. Well, I mean, and Herbert was living at home, so there could be another retelling of this story where Mr. White just offs his son because he's like enough is enough, or maybe
Like
the
the
son
true
uses
crime
monkey.
story of it. Like
Right, right.
you got like the life insurance, you got everything that he needed.
Right.
Exactly.
This actually reminds me a lot of the story of King Midas, right? It's the everything I wish for everything I touch to turn to gold, and so he becomes a wealthy king, only to accidentally forget that he has a hand of gold when he goes to embrace his daughter, and then turns her into gold.
That's right.
So
Monkey's
yeah,
paw.
yeah, monkey's paw, right?
Yeah.
And gold hands,
And
I
a gold
guess, right?
hand. Right. Weird. Yeah, palms and hands. There's a lot of symbolism and myth around that. Well, and then what's really interesting is in this story, after about a week, they have the funeral, and Mrs. White, she's suffering from grief. She's totally beset of, or totally sad, and starts to insist that her husband use the monkey paw again to wish for their son to come back to life. But Mr. White's like, no, I don't want to use it again. I'm not summoning my son's mutilated, decomposing body. Like, he's just visioning the worst case scenario because he knows it's a hellish consequence, wish giver. But she pleads, and he finally does it. The monkey paw worms around, and then it's quiet. And then there's like a slapping knock at the door. Mr. White, he runs for the door. Or no, the Mrs. White, she runs for the door. She's trying to open it, but there's a latch that she can't reach. And there's another knock. And Mr. White's standing at the top of the stairs. He's looking at his wife trying to open the door. He can only picture this zombie-looking version of his son knocking at the door. And he's just like terrified that the thing outside is not the son he once loved. So he makes his third and final wish to make it go away. The knocking stops, and Mrs. White finally gets the door open to find that there's no one there. And it ends. Now,
It would have been so metal if it was her healthy son that died right in front of her again.
That's what I'm saying. You would be metal. But what I was thinking was like, well, listen, maybe the monkey's paw, I mean, would it bring back a zombie son? He didn't actually see the son. So it's not confirmed, 3 out of, and his third wish went off without consequence. It's not like he wanted the son to go away and then poof, his wife is gone now,
Yeah, it's a good metaphor. It's a good metaphor that the curiosity will always be there. Was it really the son at the door? The thing that sort of gnaws at you, the unknown, what could have been.
It puts
that
the
always
reader,
is there.
It puts the reader in the position of Mr. White early on, because you're reading this and you're like, well, that's not that bad. You could have just brought him back,
Yeah, but I think it also just speaks to the human condition of curiosity, and so that the monkey paw, again, then we sort of this whole thing repeats its cycle, right? The monkey paw goes to somebody else who is also curious, and that the seduction of the curiosity, I think, is what they're kind of pointing at there.
I'd co-sign that. Mike, you were going to say something?
Yeah, well, the wisdom to outwish your wishes, because the wife answers the door and there's no one there. The wife answers the door and the kid's there completely healthy. Wife might have a heart attack.
Right.
So you've traded, one for the other, but you still get the hellish consequence of this knock at the door. You still get the hellish idea the idea that you could wish for your kid. You could wish for your kid back, and you did, and then you wish for it to go away, but the wife has the ultimate disappointment. As long as Mr. White loved his wife, assuming that she had this hellish consequence of opening up the door, expecting her dead son to be resurrected, and then the son is not there. That's pretty hellish. So everything still goes in line. I wouldn't say it's without consequence, but it's a little bit easier like the pain is a lot easier than say asking for 200 pounds and then finding out your kid died.
Yeah. I think the
And
hellish consequence too is the possibility that it could have been the healthy son. And
That makes
you'll
sense.
never know. No.
That's messed up.
yeah,
Yeah.
the you'll never know thing. Yeah, is the worst part, right? Like you miss 100% of the shocks you don't take, sort of
Mhm.
idea.
Mhm.
You can always play it back in your memory of like, oh, what if I would have done this? But you don't know if you don't take the shot.
Mhm.
Right. Which at the same time, like Nick was saying, it could be justification for accepting the monkey's paw in the first place. Because if you don't, if you let your friend burn it in the fire and then your house burns down a week later, you think to yourself, well, shit, maybe I should have used the monkey's paw. I don't know for sure that it wouldn't have worked. And I do think that that's sort of like, it's not that grass is always greener, but it's the coulda, shoulda, wouldas.
It's
That
the
is,
unknown variables Mike was talking about.
yeah.
That's what it is for sure.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I think it's interesting that there's a lot of movies about being careful what you wish for. You know, there's Aladdin, Bedazzled, The Labyrinth, 13 Going on 30, Pumpkinhead. Um, I'm sure there's more out there. I know we brought up some
Hellraiser.
Hellraiser. Absolutely.
Yeah, but like, so there's definitely all of those things play on just the general wisdom that you should never no, the the general idea that you should be comfortable with the notion of whatever happens happens.
Mhm.
Like you could have all your wishes, you could try to construct reality into your tiny little hologram, but reality is much wider than that. It's what happens in all like every romance flick, right? Like you have I like to think of movies as some sort of reflection on the director, writer, whoever had the most creative hand in the thing of themselves. So like all these things talk about somebody who really wants a well ordered constructed reality that just actually doesn't exist, so they put it into their film. So there's like this monkey paw story is kind of a reflection of like a super real or what was it, hyper reality, I think that's called it, hyper
Mhm.
reality of reality itself, where you can get the wishes you want but they always come with a price. And this hyper reality has a certain moral to tell you that like sometimes you just have to deal with it, right? We owe 200 pounds on the house, we got evicted, we got evicted, let's move on to the next house or something like that.
Mm.
Mhm.
But the
Yeah.
monkey's paw is that sort of vehicle to build the hyper reality that writers and creatives wish they had for a certain subset of stories
Mm.
to
And I
get
like,
Superman.
yeah, no, I think so. And I think I like that it kind of leaves it a little bit ambiguous because we can touch back to the concept of true need. So the 200-pound thing is obviously going to backfire because he could just work extra or save and he could make that 200 pounds back. But this
Mhm.
concept that you want to bring somebody you love back from the dead, now that could be a true need. And I like that the
Hmm.
story doesn't exactly tell you what the result of that was because it also keeps it ambiguous as to whether the monkey's paw could be an instrument for good, which then perpetuates its curiosity to the next victim,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like,
there wasn't a loud crashing piano sound on the
right,
second wish.
right.
Didn't have that forebodingness. Yeah, and going along with like morals of the story, I think I read on like enotes.com that they were talking about this idea fate shouldn't be tampered with. And that wishing is sort of like a dig at fate and can come with it some punishment. And I think that there's something to be said for that, accepting one's fate. But then it's all really funny because humans always love a person that changes their stars. And whether they do that at great cost or not to themselves or loved ones, maybe that's part of it.
Well, there's no like fate is malleable. So I mean, at least in my mind, it's malleable. No fate but the fate we make for ourselves. That sort of notion. You can definitely bend it and twist it, but it comes at a great cost. As long as you're willing to deal with the cost, then it's fine. Like hard work, right? Assuming a meritocratic society, assuming all that stuff is great, you're still going to have to sacrifice something for your hard work. Like if it means showing up to somebody's funeral, if it means showing up to a birthday, spending time with family, you spend your time working on something rather than doing something else. So if you want to make fate for yourself, then there's always going to be some sort of sacrifice. And the monkey's paw just kind of shortcuts all of that, I think. Like there's still some sort of like it leaves it ambiguous. It could be good. Like hard work can be good, but if you're working 16 hours a day for a year, I guarantee you're going to lose some friends, or you're going to lose some family members that don't respect you anymore because you went to work. It's the Robin Williams movie Hook, right? He's like the crazy businessman who's always wasn't focused on his family, all of that stuff. So this plays out in lots of stories, and it still holds true, I think, to reality in general.
I do. I like this concept of energy sort of cost, right? Because is it the second law of thermodynamics? Like the energy put into something can't be more than
create or destroy more energy.
Right. Okay, yeah. Something along those lines. But I do think that there's a little bit to that with this sort of mechanism as well. Like this, you're talking about whether you work really hard or you win the lottery. You're almost sort of like energetically cheating and tipping the scales. You're not actually putting the energy into sort of that construct. You're trying to just have the framework without any of that, without any of the input to that. So yeah, I could see where that becomes an imbalance, where you sort of tip the scales too far, and then there needs to be some sort of cosmic some sort of cosmic reckoning so that the scales can adjust back, right? Or like when you said about the lottery, people usually go bankrupt. Like that kind of, to me, is that balancing.
Yeah, I see it a lot in engineering. Like I'm said it multiple times. I say a software engineer, but like you can play the game in a couple of different ways, right? As far as private businesses go and engineering goes, you could either put all of your faith in engineering and work your skills up and do all of that, or you could be a little bit more political about things, right? And you can manipulate some people here or there, push the situation in like the right favor, kind of cheat a bit. But at the end of the day, you won't have you'll get the monkey's paw effect. You won't have the skills to do the things that you have to do because you chose to take the more political cheating route. And that's how things actually play out in reality. So yeah, it's a very nice hyper reality. It's very, because that's what stories are. Hyper realities of reality, ideally. However you want to dress them up. But or at least in where I come from, that happens. It's a good drawing that what you're making, it's a good analogy.
Nice. Well, and I'm paraphrasing this story, but there is one point in the beginning, the very beginning, the father and the son, they're playing a chess game. And at one point, Mr. White, he moves his most valuable piece, the king, puts it in unnecessary danger. And he recognizes that he made a mistake that could cost him the game. And indeed, he does lose the game. And it's sort of a foreshadowing of him entering into unnecessary danger. Sort of like Nick said, it's not a necessary wish. It was just a extra bonus wish. And so what I guess my question is that, like, if we're in a world where there is some sort of fate, some sort of scales to good luck and bad luck, you're sort of just supposed to play your part, not tip the scales one way or the other. Do you think that we are given warnings to back off when we're pushing too much? Like you buy 10 lottery tickets, you get beaten up when you try to buy the 11th. So you probably shouldn't go get any more, but you're like, I just got to get that 12th. And then you win the jackpot and then you're killed by a truck or something like that. It's pretty dramatic.
I ran over by a bus. I've been hit by a few buses in my life. Yeah, you'll be fine. Don't worry, you'll get up, kid.
John Lennon wrote a song about instant karma, right? So it's that instant reminder. Now, most of the time it doesn't happen that way, but there are usually acute times when karma snaps at you much quicker and harder than it normally would.
Acute
And,
times that are not cute.
no, definitely not. But I think I wanted to touch upon what you were saying there with this sort of the story about them playing chess. There's an interesting point there that he puts himself almost into a fated position. So that kind of ties back to what Mike was talking about with this concept of you making your own fate. Like by making that free will decision and mistake, quote, he fated himself to a destiny of losing the game. And so I think that might be sort of the mechanism that is what's happening, is that, you make your choices that sort of perpetuate your fate out into a certain direction.
And does he actually move his king in the story? It's
Yeah.
his king that moves. It's intriguing.
Yeah, you usually don't use the king unless you're castling or you've already lost the game
I
because
mean, you can
pieces.
bong cloud it. I mean, I'm a big fan of bong clouding. That's when you move your king up one piece. It's a troll opening, but so there's one piece that we're missing here of the misguided nature of assuming that your king is the most valuable piece. It's true that if your king is checkmated and can't move anywhere and will be captured the next turn, that you lose the game, but your most valuable piece is your queen. She's the one that can change the tide of the whole match. So there's also this thing of being misguided, where the father, Mr. White, ends up using the monkey's paw in general instead of letting it burn. Again, the misguided nature of the human, where you're not actually seeing things for what they are. You might assume that because you lose the game, if you lose this piece, it's your most valuable piece. And in reality, it's not. The most valuable piece is more offensive than that. Just, going back to the fate thing, it's your mind, it's your will. Fate is great. Fate is fantastic. Fate to do stuff. You have a destiny to do things, but ultimately, it's your will that determines what happens. I.e., take like the high school kid who is, I don't know, a top draft pick in football. Like, is going to go to the best football school, have a full ride, and get drafted in the NFL. As the future's painted for the kid. And then for some reason, the kid has a free will night of partying and, smoke some weed, and then ends up getting arrested and loses the scholarship and all of that. Not really seeing that it wasn't fate that was your most valuable thing. It was always your will. It was your will to go out to the party. It was your will to do these things, to be a kid. And it may not be no fault of the universe, but it's the misguided nature. And I think it's also a nice little layer, or a nice little theme of the story, where the father moves the king thinking it's the most valuable piece, when in reality it's not. It's just the piece that if you move will probably lose you the game.
So what you're saying is fate is just the choices we regret.
No,
it is a little bit.
Maybe.
It is a little bit.
Well, and it is
Maybe.
kind of to the. Oh, sorry, were you gonna?
I think fate
I
is
was being flippant.
No, you're fine. It's good. It's funny. I think. I mean, if you regret your fate, right? Like, I think because you play choices. I think fate is the things that universe impose onto you, and your will is the thing you impose onto the universe to attempt to build some equilibrium in fate. To get real serious about it real quick.
No.
Yeah. You bite your thumb at me, I bite my thumb at you.
I was sort of being a little bit glib about the concept. Like a lot of people would say that something was fated when it was clearly their just bad decision.
Yeah,
like you were saying.
Hey, it's the Gremlins, right?
Right.
I would trust me. I've made a lot of bad decisions in my life, and if I could chalk it all up to fate, fuck it,
right.
It's fate.
It's a lot less burdensome.
Yeah, I could focus much more on other things and be like, oh man, Mike. Oh, we really shouldn't have. Ate that cookie. We ate 20 cookies.
One too many.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I guess, I love this idea of hindsight. And I do think that it wasn't necessarily mentioned in the story. But my question is, as they were writing this chess game, And Mr. White noticed that he put his king, most valuable piece to be debated, but he put his king in, quote, unnecessary danger. Now, there's something to me about them putting that in the story as a thing that Mr. White noticed in his mind. And my question is that after he chose to initiate with the monkey's paw and after everything happened, in hindsight, do we think that he looked back at that chess game and thought, oh shit, like that was the universe sort of giving me a sign, like, don't accept unnecessary danger? Because I do feel like a lot of the times with hindsight, we like to frame things as a sign that we didn't heed, and it's sort of like a way of taming chaos that could be the perception of fates, you know? And I know in Greek mythology, there's even like hindsight is like, isn't that one of the little demons with Hades or something like that? Or I don't know. I feel like
The
hindsight was
brother
some
of
sort of
Prometheus is
Epimetheus,
Yeah.
afterthought.
Epimetheus, yeah.
who's mostly a joke within that mythology. I mean, it really depends on the person because there are things you can. Now we're getting to like military tactics back in World War II in North Africa. There's the strategy that the Allies would do would be, no, I think it was the Germans. I think it was the Axis, where they would push a tank out and into like unnecessary danger, and then as the opposing force, right, whatever it is, as the op force would come in, or op four would come in, they would pull the tank back. Now sometimes the tank got sacrificed. It happens, right? But the idea was that you pulled the tank back so that as the imposing tanks were coming in, you would have tanks leveraged at a proper fire angle to create a crossfire of tanks, and it would destroy the opposing force almost 100% of the time. So in chess, you can put the king out into an unnecessary danger as long as you know what you're doing. So it can be a sign. If you don't know what you're doing, then sure, yeah, it was a sign that you make blunders all the time. But if you're more tactically minded, as the father becomes at the end by wishing for the wish to not be wished, then you can start to make sense of why you would put a king in unnecessary danger for a tactic. But that's very like military thinking.
Yeah, I think that the whole thing is foreshadowing, right? Like it's foreshadowing from the author, letting us know what's about to happen in the story, and I think that does happen in our lives sometimes, right? I do think that you're right, Ayla. It usually is afterthought. I mean, almost 99% of the time it's afterthought, but I think that that's okay because, like you're saying, we're trying to cut through this chaotic idea of randomness and bad things happening. Like, you know, when you stub your toe in the morning and, you know, something else happens, you're like, fuck this. I knew I was going to have a bad day today.
Just stayed in bed.
And you just sort of have this self-fulfilling prophecy about things. Yeah, definitely trying to tame the chaos. I do like this concept that the universe could throw you a lifeline if you're there to see it. And sort of apply it, because really the problem is that he knew that he put himself in unnecessary danger, but he just didn't have the wisdom, like we talked about, to apply that knowledge in the same parameters of the monkey's paw, where he was like, oh, you know, that's an unnecessary danger. Maybe I'll just let it burn in the fireplace. You know?
Yeah, like I just lost a chess game doing that. Maybe that was the sign.
Being reckless, flying too close to the sun. Hubris, all of that. So like, oh, it might not happen to me. Maybe I can, you know, like there's always this human tendency to think that we might be able to work the system in a way that's never been done before. You know.
But how else are you supposed to learn?
That's true.
In the beginning, you got to do it like you have to fly too close to the sun to learn.
Oh yeah, no, that's very true. Somebody has to eat the poisonous mushroom to know that the tribe can't eat it.
But then you tell the tribe. Yeah, then you tell the tribe.
That goes back to the knowledge being paid for in human life. You know, like that's what happens.
So then the question becomes like, assume that the person's going to use the monkey paw. Would you rather be the person that uses the monkey paw, or would you rather pass it on to somebody else?
Well, I mean, like you're saying, like if the monkey paw just came into existence, we didn't know anything about it.
No, we knew that there would be hellish consequences. We knew that sort of thing. And you were holding it. Would you rather use it yourself, knowing that somebody else would use it? Right? There's only one,
Right.
only one in the whole world. Would you rather be the one to deal with the hellish consequences of using it? Or would
Well,
you
we
pass
wouldn't
it on?
know unless somebody's already used it, right? How do we know something has hellish consequences if it hasn't happened yet? So that's why I'm saying, like, if it's the first time a monkey's paw ever has been introduced into the universe and nobody has a concept of it, and you're like, hey, you'll get some wishes, the answer might change.
Nietzsche's demon popped out of the fire and was like, "Hey, this has hellish consequences," and then popped back. All right.
Well, if something pops out of fire, I might listen. But yeah, I get what you mean. No, I think that there's a good question of like, oh, would you be willing to take sort of the sacrifice of your own body to perpetuate knowledge? And that's a hard question.
Yeah, you're taking the Tony Stark answer of like, when Captain America says, "You're not the guy to make the sacrifice play. You're not going to lay down yourself on the wire to let the other guy crawl over you." And he goes, "Well, I think I would just cut the wire."
Yeah. No, I get what you mean though. Like there is a human cost to knowledge. So like if I don't know that I would care enough about that particular knowledge set to actually act upon it. But there are probably knowledge sets that I would care enough to put my own safety at risk, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like I think it's in a weird way when it comes to the monkey. Like, for example, the guy who brings it to Mr. White, like he obviously knows something and is like trying to tell him like, "Don't do it, it's a bad vibe." But interestingly enough, will not demonstrate to Mr. White that it's a bad vibe.
Right.
And I think there's a little bit of cowardice there, where it's like, I would never bring you something.
Yeah, why bring it in the first place?
Yeah, like what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like I said, like if I brought like, dude, these cookies are the best cookies I've ever had. Try these. Well, you might die if you eat these cookies. You might get diabetes and die. But
They're
here,
so
I
good,
brought
though.
these cookies to the house. Why bring the cookies in the first place? Just
Right.
do the-
Yeah,
just eat the
it's definitely a
cookies
dick move.
Yeah.
His friend. Well, and you know, I love this discussion because I just remember like the more I was thinking about the monkey's paw story, it was just like it's such a short story, but there's so much richness to it. And it got me thinking about this idea of like manifesting things, right? Because with the monkey's paw, like, do you have to believe in it for it to work? Do you pass it on? Do you try it? Do you take the unnecessary risk? And when it comes to wishing, right? Like, I'm not sure how I would put manifesting and wishing apart from one another. It almost seems to me like there's wishing and then manifesting is sort of like either there's the woo-woo side of it where there's all
It's the
these
difference
rules of
between
engagement.
it's a difference between like a Gnostic versus a more traditional theist outlook, right? The wishing would be
Mhm.
putting it in something else's hands. The Gnostic idea would be putting it in your hands and making you the perpetuator of the wish.
Right, like the God helps those who helps themselves sort of adage.
Well, a little bit more like you are the God that creates the potentiality for the wish to happen.
Oh,
That's what
got it.
manifestation is.
Right. Right. And like you can take it on the woo-woo side, you could take it to the self-fulfilling prophecy side, you could take it to the neuroscience, it reinforms your subconscious side, like there's a lot of ways you can view it. And I've always had us like manifesting doesn't make sense to me because I'm a little bit more linear and logic oriented. So the
Ooh,
The
I'd
whole
make the
manifesting
argument that
thing.
it should make more sense to you because you're linear and logic set. We're very similar.
Well,
I
like
think
I
she means the empty
the woo-woo.
manifestation that doesn't cost anything.
Right. Like I've presented 3 different columns that you can divide manifesting into. There could be more, but for most of them,
No.
they don't necessarily make a lot of sense.
Okay, so what column do you ascribe to for manifestation?
Oh, I don't. I'm just gonna call manifesting like
You
just
just
this little
observe.
blob.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, fair.
Um, because like, okay, so like if you look at rules on the internet, right? Like you take the woo version, you get principles where they say like make a vision board, start journaling, the
No,
pillow method.
I'm not worried about like the internet. I'm curious as to what do you think manifesting is? Do you think manifesting is the internet version? Do you have your
Oh,
not to get aggressive about it?
no, no, it's fine. I think from what I've read in some of the like more recent scientific journals, I do think that when you ruminate on stuff, you give your brain's subconscious greater capacity to chew on it. You know what I mean? Like, so if you wake up every morning and you reiterate 10 goals to yourself, well, you're putting those 10 goals in repetition, it's in your routine. It might help inform your choices in the first hour of the day. After a week or two, maybe it reinforces your decisions in the next 2 hours. Like, and then as you keep doing it, you're going to start having maybe dreams about it, or your subconscious will chew on it a little bit. And then you'll suddenly kind of wake up and have some new reframes about it. So I think that, like,
That's like the optimizer and manifestation.
well, that, but it's also like where you put your attention to drives like energy in a weird way, because like there's a lot of research about attentionality and the way that focus and attention like back informs your brain and the way that you handle things. I can see it from a manifesty sort of lens, even though the language would be totally different.
I think it's just it's much more
Does-
simple. Yeah, go ahead.
Does it all stay mental to you? Is there no? Never mind. Does it all stay mental to you?
What do you mean, like
Because
as opposed to what?
the steps that you have labeled out are all within the mentality or within like the thought sphere, right? You make a list, you do something else, but there's no actuality to the manifesting. To me, manifesting. Never mind. So does it only lead up to like all a mental process or a process of like scientific observation and noting down, or is there another part to it?
Well, just to clarify, it is a blob to me, so I haven't really made a decision about it. I think that it's like
I
it's
think
like
we're getting
talking about
caught
the
up on a
color blue and
colloquialization.
realizing,
Hold on.
yeah, yeah.
I think we're
No,
getting
no.
caught up on a colloquialization of the concept of manifestation, right? So, of course, if you're going to truly manifest something, it takes work to put into the thing that you want to get. But we colloquially talk about manifestation, and a lot of New Agey thoughts on manifestation have zero energy input to gain the thing that you. And I think that that's probably the difference there, right? Like we're talking about something that in the woo-woo sense would have no energetic input necessary to yield the outcome you want, whereas Mike is talking, I think, more about something that actually would require work and not just like a mental focus on things.
I apologize for my acute attention to actualization as a component to manifestation.
Yeah, I think people just use it less in that way. That's why. You know what I mean? Like people don't consider the actual work that it takes to do stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's why, like,
it's like the Oprah thing. Put a car on a bulletin board and you'll have a new car. You know what I mean?
exactly. Right. As opposed to like, okay, you want to be an artist, put in your, what do they say, like 10,000 hours to be a master or whatever.
Mhm.
And so while you're doing that, you're also like journaling and manifesting and doing all the thought work behind it. Does that perpetuate some sort of like momentum that would give one artist a leg up over another, thus manifesting the reality that they said they were going to manifest? I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. Like I said, like it's a hard thing. It's a blob because it's not like there's any science or studies on it.
I would consider like the thoughts and journaling and all that stuff, like the So like say we're making like a painting. I would consider the journaling, all the thoughts behind it, the mentality of it. The mentality of it. That's proper. Where you're like trying to figure out the design and all that stuff, and then it's like a gun. You during this whole process of figuring it all out, you're pulling back the hammer, and then the actualization once you start painting. This is like the same thing in coding. Once you pull that trigger, you pull that trigger, and there's no more thought anymore. There's no more intellectualization of the problem. But the two combined are the things that I feel like we would call the thing that we call manifestation. You get it, like you have like the thought process, you have all the journaling, you have all that stuff in the beginning. But the second, like same thing with song making, like you do all of everything you want, but the second you step into the recording booth, you're now pulling the trigger, and that thought goes away, and you're running on intuition. You're running on a whole separate set of components. But the two combined, you could call it manifestation.
Yeah, you used the word actualizing earlier. So I guess what you're meaning to say is that you have person A, they're doing a lot of thought work and then events happen. Person B does a lot of thought work and events happen. You would only say between A and B that manifestation occurred if there was a consequence that arrived that they manifested, like they actually made happen. Is that what you're saying? Or
there's a consequence that results into a physical product, which an outside observer can observe, whether it be a song, painting, a piece of code, something like that.
There's a difference between putting a car on a bulletin board and then going to work a job that affords you to buy that car.
I have derailed the whole conversation.
I don't know why we're so caught up on these distinctions.
You
guys are both saying the same thing. By the way.
Yeah, we're both saying the same thing. Like, the difference is just the thing you've created.
Okay.
It's the actual physical work that it takes to do the thing.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I apologize.
No, it's fine. I was just really bringing up manifestation because I wanted to think about it in terms of fate, right? Because I think that's kind of interesting, especially with the monkey's paw situation. You know, he's getting swatted down for tempting fate, you know, trying to wish away something to be different. But isn't that just what manifesting is wanting things to be different than they already are?
Initially.
Or is that wrong? Initially, right. Then you actuate it
and then you actuate, and then you're doing the thing. And then that creates more abundance of the thing that you're wanting. And then you have this sort of snowball effect because like begets like. And but it does start with the conceptualization, which a lot of people misuse as the word manifestation, because I don't think that that's what they really mean. They just mean thinking about something. And so I think that, yes, you have to start. It starts with a thought, but then as Mike's saying, you have to take that thought and bring it to the physical world and actualize and sort of itemize the things that will take you to that place, because they don't just come for nothing. You know, like they don't just, you don't just get something for nothing. I mean, that's just the way it goes. So.
Right.
I mean, poetically, you do if you're real slick about it.
But if you want to sing a song about it,
does take work. Yeah. But no. I think I gotta trace. Sorry, I have to stack trace things. I'm drinking too much. Visualization. Blah blah blah. What the hell were you saying? What was the first thing?
It just comes down to nothing's free. There's nothing free.
Oh, there's something free, but there's a to tempt fate. So like fate is the will of the universe pressing upon you, right? It's whatever everybody else thinks and wants you to do, right? Be that a job description, be it family responsibilities, be it friendship responsibilities, what have you. What you do, what free will is the opposite and hopefully equal reaction to fate. That's what free will is. It's the fate that you're pressing onto fate, where you pretty much stand up and say, no, I'm going to do this, and that. and it could lie into the equilibrium of the fate being pressed upon you and could build to the bigger fate of the universe. But it's what you want to do at the end of the day where you're pressing upon it. It's
Mhm.
again in the monkey's paw, it's that wish, right? The wish
Yeah.
that you give it, you might face some hellish consequences for it, but you still got your wish.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's also deeply restricted by willpower. So, people can manifest till the cows come home, but if you don't have the will to actuate and to actually do something, you're not going to get anywhere. And further, the bigger you want to sort of change the path of fate, the greater your will needs to be. And so it's a
Mhm.
test of willpower to change the course of the universe. And you're doing that every time you're trying to make a decision sort of outside of fate or whatever.
I gotta get real nerdy real quick and look something up.
Okay.
It's,
Well, while you're looking that up, I was just thinking about how interesting it is to think about the monkey's paw and to think about this idea of it being a malevolent wish giver. And that idea of wishing tempting the fates. And like you're saying, manifesting can be sort of like wishing, but there's with actualization. And you do test the fates, and the fates will test you back, and you will exert your will again. But it's interesting, because when you have a story, you can chalk it up to good luck, bad luck, benevolent, malevolent, da 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 da. Da. Whereas when you think about it, just sort of this murky manifesting fate willpower scenario, it's less, I don't know, binary. It's less good, bad. It's more just
You
sort
can
of
use your
like,
fate. You can use your will for evil very easily. You know what I mean? Like I don't think there's a relativity to the way the universe sort of responds to willpower. I don't think that it says, oh, well, no, that was a bad thing. You don't
well,
want to
so
do that.
I guess I'm trying to clarify willpower
Yeah.
versus wishing. What's the difference?
Willpower is the stick-to-itiveness.
Actualizing.
It's the stick-to-itiveness, the perseverance. A wish can be flimsy. I wish to have $1 million.
Be careful.
It didn't come.
Right.
It didn't come.
Right.
But if I took that wish and started to use my willpower, then I would have to actualize and start to create a path for getting Nick $1 million.
Mhm.
And
one can say that like a wish is the beginning of will, right? Like I could wish to run the world. I could sit there and wish. It's like hope, right? Hope is a great drug. You can hope to run the world. You can sit there and wish to run the world. And then will is the steps that you do to put it in place, right? Like now I'm a mayor. I've done the steps to get elected mayor through a democratic system. Or screw it, I got enough guns here where I've taken over the city, and I declare myself mayor. I run the city now.
Manifestation is the map, and willpower is your vehicle.
Yeah, and whereas wishing is just the beginning steps of that. And if you have some sort
Wishing's
of
the teleporter.
yeah, you just use teleport. Like I wish to run the world, and somebody was like, "All right, you run the world now."
Yeah.
Boom.
Okay.
You're taking the shortcut.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the World of Warcraft thing where like either I could level my character up,
Mm-hmm.
spend the time and learn all the abilities, or I could pay somebody else to do it. And that person just gives me the character at the end of the job.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this made me think of the Green Lantern Oath, which was what I was looking up. I was like in brightest day and darkest night, and I was like, "Is that the thing?" And it is.
Nice.
No evil shall escape my sight. Let the my pure background. It's like, yeah, no, but it's the same thing where it's that you have to have. In reality, you have to have the will to push against the fate that is given to you in reality, right?
I love this.
And maybe you have a really great fate. Like maybe you just got lucky and were born into the quote unquote right life. But that's only from an outsider's perspective. Nobody knows what you actually had willed in order to keep yourself. Like I've seen
how atrophied your will becomes by living in a life that's already, sort of like everything's taken care of.
Yeah, given it to you. That's the downfall of kingdoms back in the day. Right?
It's the Lotus Eaters too.
Yeah, but no one knows what your will actually is, and I think that's far more valuable than any wish that you can fulfill. And what's
Mhm.
interesting with like the monkey's paw, when you get more to what's gifted or blessed or whatever have you, if you're gifted or blessed with beauty, with talent, intelligence, money, you can run down the whole fucking list. It becomes a very monkey's paw situation where you're gifted this thing, but it's also giving you some sort of curse. Like, I think one of the worst things you could have in life is being completely honest. Because if you can become completely honest, you're probably not the most liked person at the party.
Jim Carrey proved that in a movie called Liar Liar, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah, you're the
Yes.
least. If anything, you're the
Yeah.
least liked person at the party.
Yes.
You're being brutally honest does not win you any friends. It leads to isolation. Being beautiful leads to isolation. Being rich probably leads you to isolation. Same thing with being intelligent. Like, all of these things end up being more harm than good. Right? You end up being a target for whatever reason, for whatever fate has given you, but your will can overcome that for the thing that you actually want.
Mhm.
Yeah. Nothing's free. Everything has a cost. So even the person with the greatest life still feels a cost.
Mhm.
Yeah, of
It,
course.
it just depends on what they feel that cost is, but it's there.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it gets harder to explain in those different places. Like, the more talented you are, the more um I find this more with, like, when I talk to rich people. There's like a big strong ego, but it's like that ego is there for a reason, and you get past that, then you start to see the curses of, like, oh, you can't trust anybody because people want your money. And then that ends up playing out like and like the way, how the way is described. Like, there's one way for everything, but you can't really describe it. This is the same with people and just the things that fate, the monkey's paw that they end up giving them, where it seems like something good, but in reality, it's far more costly than anybody would think.
Yeah. And I think, this is a perfect time of year to be hosting this particular episode for those of you listening. They've got Christmas wishes, you've got the wishes or intentions that you set for the new year. And it's just one of those things where it's like, if you want that hot body, you got to be you got to be willing to eat grass for a couple months and like work out until
In
like
the
you
gym.
can't walk
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And then once you get that hot body, you have
keep it.
to well, not keep it, but you have to be okay with somebody
Yeah.
maybe being a little bit aggressive.
Oh gosh. Well,
And
yeah.
then that is a whole
Whole monkey's paw. Yeah. Well, so what I was thinking about was because you brought up the free will component, and I want to go back to that because it was so on point. Because do you, like with free will, with any type of will, you have to make a decision in order to want the thing. And so where I wanted to sort of end this episode, because we are at time, but we can go a little bit longer, that's totally fine. But this idea that some scientists are starting to wonder about the origin of our choices. Nick, you did a really great episode on fungi, about who's making the decision. Is it just gut fungi? Are we in control? And right after we did that episode, I listened to this podcast by Annika Harris. And here's just a little snippet of something she shared that I've been trying to wrap my brain around since. It says, the brain as a system does have a type of free will. However, in that it makes decisions and choices on the basis of outside information, internal goals, and complex reasoning. But when I discuss the illusion of consciousness, of conscious will here, I'm speaking of the illusion that consciousness is the will itself. The concept of a conscious will that is free seems to be incoherent. It suggests that one's will is separated and isolated from the rest of its environment, yet paradoxically able to influence its environment by making choices within it. I was once at an event where my friend and meditation teacher, Joseph Goldstein, was asked if he believed we have free will. He answered the question with arresting clarity when he said that he couldn't even figure out what the term could possibly mean. What does it mean to have a will that is free from the cause and effect relationships of the universe? As he gestured with his hands dancing above him in the air, trying to point to this imaginary free will, he asked, how can we even try to picture such a will floating about? And, obviously there's so much to be said about free will.
I found
That's
the
sort of
atheist.
like a, huh?
I found the atheist.
Yeah.
Is that Sam Harris's sister or wife or something? Annika Harris.
I think
She
it's
sounds
his
exactly like Sam
wife.
Harris.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're
well
both
then she's
of
just
the
repeating
mind.
the same bullshit Sam Harris says.
Right. There's
I have a huge
specific
issue.
term but they're both from a term. Gosh, what is it? It's like this. Actually, you know what? I have it written down. Let me get a book. I'll be right back.
Anyways, to me, this is just the atheists trying to wrap their head around the concept of a soul. Like they want to be able to point at a will as if that's something to point to, and then laugh at us when they say they can't find it. It's like nobody asked you to find it.
Don't
just bugs the shit out of me.
Don't tell them yet that they have faith.
Right? I know.
Let them explore.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Access
Maybe in a few
they
thousand
do.
years they'll figure it out.
Yeah, they'll get there one day, but it's really cute to see them claim faith without
Right.
claiming faith. But
Right.
they'll get there. Don't worry.
Well,
What
I
is
found the
the story?
term. They call themselves panpsychism aficionados or whatever, but panpsychism is basically the idea that consciousness might be fundamental to the nature of the reality rather than the other way around, which is a fancy term of being like, oh, they believe in the form.
But
You know what I
what good is consciousnnis without free will?
I thought you were going to say that they could make pans out of psychic energy. I was
Yeah,
like,
that'd be
let's
cool.
go. Please let me know. I
That would
don't
be
ever have
dope.
to wash
Be
dishes.
better than what they're saying.
Yeah.
That's how you
why-
get those cookies.
Yes.
How could consciousness exist without a free will? I mean, like, what is that? That's not consciousness. That's bug thinking.
Well, okay, so here's an interesting study. There's a whole bunch of the different studies that she brings up, but one that I wrote down that was really interesting is physicists used modified MRI machines, and they said that they found quantum entanglement between the heart and the brain, and the results suggest that the human brain operates like a quantum system, and could be the ticket to eventually solving the hard problem of consciousness. Hold on a second. This is not the study that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about a different one, but I can't remember where I put it. Oh,
Consciousness is just God for atheists. Hot take.
hot take. Right. Oh, yeah.
I was going to
I
say
can co-sign that, actually.
their lack of God is a God.
That's true too. Yeah, absolutely it is. Thank goodness.
Oh, okay. I found it. Okay, so here's the experiment. It was done by a neuroscientist, Michael Gazzaniga. And it basically the idea is the brain knows before you do. So basically, like the brain prepares a complex motor movement of your body before you are consciously aware of deciding to move. And this was a study by
Getting down to biological determinism. We're talking when it comes to terms of consciousness and free will. We're building upon networks of neuron and synaptical firing sequences that are far beyond complex. Whether or not my brain knows that I'm going to move my finger, that was in Sam Harris's book Free Will. And I almost chucked the book at the bartender at the bar that I was in while reading it because it was such a asinine argument. Great, good job. Yeah. I know I need to. We're talking about firing a gun, and you tell me I have to pull the hammer back.
Right. Yeah.
Fire the gun.
I know that
Congratulations.
it takes nanoseconds for me to be able to put words from my mouth when I'm thinking them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You've observed a thing. Good job. You did the first step in the scientific method. I'm proud of you, kid. Now let's get to the whole method. No, I know what you're saying, but that I'm sorry to be so angry about it.
No, it pisses me off too. I don't like it.
It's an
Oh,
over intellectualization of an obvious observation,
Mm-hmm. That's
and
exactly it.
it. Good job. I'm so proud of you. You observe. Like, can we talk about now free will and consciousness, or are you just gonna sit here and look at the elementary things? That's why I always say, like, give the atheists time. They will build up their argument in due time with the measurements that they've chose to pick, but eventually they're going to get back to God.
Mhm.
They're eventually going to get there.
Well,
When
you know,
and it doesn't matter what God it is. I don't really give a shit about that, but they're going to get back to this notion of a God.
Mhm.
which, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I just think that some of the experiments that she brought up that just sort of questioned the ordering of decision making, and whether it, because all these science experiments, they're new. You can be like, is the technology flawed, is the methodology flawed, is the interpretation flawed, blah blah blah, blah. You can derail it till the cows come home. But my question is, assume that they are right, and assume that here's a quote. Assume that in actuality, your brain, with its history and the outside world, that your brain is kind of doing its thing, and that your consciousness is simply witnessing decisions unfold. Now, I thought this was just really interesting, because if you do assume that your consciousness is sort of like after the fact, or it's living in the past or whatever, then how would that come into play with a monkey's paw situation? How could the fates be so cruel as to punish a human that doesn't have the ability to make its own decisions?
They're wrong,
Right?
so
That
it
doesn't
doesn't
add
matter.
up.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
but
why it doesn't
God
add up.
and
No,
fates are to be like, we don't have
So-
proof of these things either. So it's all up for grabs, and
So-
I'm just having a playful conversation about what if it is.
Working within the logical system that they're right, then one can make the argument that the monkey's paw is not cruel at all. That in fact, the brain is not parametric, a parasitic system within any living organism. The human brain is actually a parasite to the host, which is the human. And the monkey's paw is the universe trying to correct and kill said parasite, or at least correct it. Because if consciousness is just the filter which we observe things, and the brain is doing things for itself, the brain is selfish. This is actually true in starvation. If you starve long enough, your brain will sacrifice the heart in order to keep the brain alive. So then in my mind, the brain is nothing. The human brain is nothing more than a parasite that acts for itself. It's a selfish
Oh,
creature.
snap.
And you are reduced to the ghost in the shell inside of a human or a biological autonoma.
Yeah, welcome
know.
to the hell of human existence within this framework of thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Why you would want to go there? Fuck if I know, man. But there's
I don't
somebody
know.
who wants to be correct about everything.
That's true.
Well, and Nick
Holy
and I
shit.
were laughing because we were talking about like some of these, because she's not a scientist herself. She just sort of reads and interprets and sort of provides information for the layman, which she
Yeah, an
herself is.
aggregator. It's
But
fine. There's nothing wrong with being an aggregator and a translator.
right, no, nothing wrong at all. But it's kind of funny because she's on like a couple podcasts, and when people ask her about sort of how she feels about all of this, she seems bothered by it. Like, this isn't information that's making her feel like good. And I just wonder, like, is that because the information itself is disturbing, were it
How many
true,
times?
or is it just because she tends to be a little bit more of a downer? And if you interjected like an optimist in this situation, that you would see a skewing of the data or interpretation. I don't know, but I wonder.
She's
I don't think
she's doing the mental thing. That the physical thing that she's doing is putting your hand to the fire. Like, when something burns, you want to recoil. So her brain is recoiling every time she recites this information. Hence the prehensiveness you're doing. This is the same that you run into in nihilism. Once you actually look at nihilism for what it is, your brain recoils from it. Which maybe might even strengthen the argument the brain is more parasitic than we like to think. But that doesn't fucking matter because
Fungi.
because we got fucking fungi. I'm done.
Yeah,
Leave it.
that answers
Well,
everything.
Yeah. But like, here's the truth: within her lifespan, she's not going to answer the question. As an aggregator, as a translator, she doesn't have the ability to break ground on new information. It is a self-torturous thing. It is the same thing as the Christian that whips themselves on the back in the Middle Age era to atone for their sins, except these sins are intellectual sins. This is the intellectual dark ages right now because we have so much information we don't know what to do with it. In due time, we'll figure it out. But for someone like her, it bothers her because it's a painful thing to think about. No one can dispute that. But if you keep putting your hand over the oven or over the stove, it's going to burn you. So she has to figure out some new thought form or as this aggregation goes on, make a single new idea so that it doesn't burn her anymore and she could present the information in a way that doesn't hurt. But that's why I think it hurts her.
Yeah, it's almost like you're saying her ideas are like a monkey paw that needs to be thrown in the fire.
Yeah, I mean, like she could discard it completely.
But the side effect of knowledge is cynicism, and if you're not careful, you can be consumed by it. You have to be very careful with knowledge. It's we live, like Mike says, we live in this informational dark age, but it's because we are swimming through an ocean of knowledge, and when you're inundated, even if it's not real information, it can still have an effect on you as a person. And I feel like sometimes these people who over intellectualize everything see things so cynically that I wonder if they're doing themselves a disservice sometimes.
You mean like they need wholesomeness to return to their
or just
inner
optimism?
home?
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe find a cat, pet it, or a dog. Or, like just bring a little bit of joy back into your life, because like knowledge is a heavy thing, and information is a heavy thing, and it can weigh on the soul. And so I just like sometimes I feel like these people, maybe she is sort of like grimacing because she's just been focused on this field of information for so long that perhaps she's like, her physicality is starting to change because of all of this information. I don't know. I don't want to sound like a Luddite, but I do think that there is like a balance you need to strike sometimes.
This is where wisdom and philosophy comes, right? Knowledge and intellectualization is not necessarily wisdom. But this is where I love like Diogenes. Alexander comes up to him, and in the hardcore story, he's digging through some bones. And the great Alexander, take Alexander as a metaphor for knowledge that is imparted onto the person. The great knowledge asks Diogenes what he's doing, and he looks at them, he's looking through bones, and he goes, I'm trying to discern the difference between your father and a slave, and I can't tell the difference. In death, we're all the same. Don't trip out about all this like heavy knowledge. Do the work if you want, if that's like where your heart takes you. But to take it that personally, to take it that far is a little bit too much. At the end of the day, we all die. It's not worth getting yourself down and becoming troubled over it. Or prove like nothing is worth your life to prove that you're right. It's simply not. We all become the same at the end of the day.
And I wonder if some truths are not worth uncovering, because if it's true that we are just sort of ghosts in the shells in a biological autonoma, like like you said, the hell that will incur because of that information. I don't know. I might wish on a monkey's paw to stop it.
I think that's where mystery schools come in, and like the aesthetic class, and like this sort of let the people who can handle that weight handle it, and then let them form the knowledge that the rest can, because this is where like even with governments where they get into the idea of informational panic, right? Like if I told you that actually in Mexico there's a bunch of nukes pointing at LA, that might cause you to freak the hell out.
Mm-hmm.
But if we keep that quiet and can manipulate the information to where it doesn't seem that bad, that might be better for the general population. So we as a species are either going to have to take a step where we realize where that's okay, have the knowledge of the knowledge that it's okay, or we're going to have to go all in and say, like, we're fine with the truth. We're fine with the hell. That's fine.
Now give it to us all at once.
Yes.
You know?
Just let it go. Just shoot it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But, you know, for the most part, that's why philosophers existed, was that they were the ones that dealt with the heavy knowledge and the heavy wisdom. And nowadays, we've kind of lost that because of, for some dumbass reason, we've decided that all knowledge should equate to money, right? If you go to college, you should get a job that makes more. You know, here we've lost the value of knowledge for knowledge's sake. We've tried to make it into a dollar thing.
Yeah.
But that's the monkey's paw, right? That's the whole crux of it. It's, you got to pick one or the other.
And nothing's free.
Nothing's free. Yeah, if you want to hide the knowledge, it's great. Let the people think. Let the atheists think whatever they want to think. Let the believers think whatever they want to think. But if you want to find the weight of the truth, understand that the weight of the truth comes with its weight, comes with the cost.
Yeah, you can't ride two horses with one ass. That's for sure.
That's fair. That's why I
just
always
think of a
keep.
donkey trying to ride two horses.
That's why I always keep my head far up my ass. You know,
Yeah, you're
because
like the
Ba-dum-bum.
Ouroboros.
yeah, because let me tell you, the great ability to tongue punch my prostate makes life worth living.
There you go.
Nice. And that's all I've got for this evening.
Sweet.
Monkey's paw.
Nicely done, Ayla.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
was-
Thanks
that
for
was-
chatting.
That was an onion of an episode. 10 out of 10.
Mhm.
A little bit, right? I don't know. I've always loved the concept of a monkey's paw situation in cinema. I wanted to read the original story and think about it. And yeah, thanks for
Did you
joining
ever see-
me.
Did you ever see 12 Monkeys?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
A lot of
Mhm.
monkey paws in that movie.
Yeah.
24.
Literally.
No, 48.
Yeah,
If you count a
Uh,
monkey foot as a paw as well.
you do.
All right.
All
May
right,
I
thanks.
preview next week?
Please do. Let us know what we're talking about next week, Mike.
In the new year, new year, new year, new year.
Chicka, New Year, New Year. We're going to talk about I think I've been working on for like a couple of decades now. Psychotech.
Ooh.
Interesting. I
How
like
can
it.
we build psychological technologies to aid in industry, self-health, and the greater world?
Sounds nefarious. I love
I
it.
love it. That's not monkey. That doesn't have monkey's paw written all over it. Or
Not at
anything.
all.
Depends on how you use it. It's,
Right.
Same thing with all new knowledge, right?
That's right.
I'm
that's
either
right.
gonna be Galileo or the Inquisition. You get to choose.
Nobody suspects the Inquisition. All right, guys. Thank you, Ayla, for the incredible talk. And thank you guys for listening. We really appreciate it. Let us know what you think about this episode in the comments. Give us a thumbs up. Subscription would really help our YouTube page out. We're trying to grow that audience and we can't without your help. If you want to see what we do with our friends on other podcasts, you can go check out Facebook at Think Ring Talks to go see the whole catalog of podcasts we do with our friends. Tuesdays through Sundays, there's an episode of something going on, so you can go check out all of those there. And then each of those channels have their own YouTube page. We also got a couple of people on Twitch. We can go see Strawberries and Coffee on Twitch Tuesdays and Thursday nights. That's Dejan the Mustard, and he's playing new games, old games. He's got such a catalog. He's playing something always. And he's got a catalog on YouTube you can go check out at Strawberries and Coffee. Our friend Big Mike also has a Twitch channel you can go check out. It's called King_of_Ilion, and you can go check him out on Twitch as well. Tonight is Exofathom. That's Friday nights. And then you got Saturday mornings is This Merry Moment with Keelan and Bobby. You can go check them out on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify, I believe. Sunday and Wednesdays is Screen Time Continuum, 8:30 p.m. Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, I think, somewhere else. And then Tuesdays is Keelan with If Numbers Could Talk. And you can go check him out 8 p.m. on Tuesdays, Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. All right, I think I did all the plugging. Thank you guys so much for listening in tonight. We hope that you're having a wonderful time whenever you're listening to this, and we will catch you next time. Until then, stay out there, and we will see you on the next Exofathom. Good night.
Peace.
Stay classy.
San Diego?
Go fuck
Yep.
yourself, San Diego.